Hello everyone, my name is Keith Anthony Blanchard, and today I want to talk to you about dying, death, grief, and loss. The illusion of an end. In 1988, I had moved to Memphis, Tennessee from South Louisiana. After somewhat getting settled, after about 2 weeks, I received a phone call from my sister informing me that my older sibling was passing away due to complications of an abscess. She had Friedreich's ataxia most of her life, and because of this abscess, her body was too weak to fight it. And so I left to go to South Louisiana to be with my sister and my family in this pivotal time of all of our lives. On my sister's deathbed, saying my goodbyes, holding her hand, something very, very odd began to happen. Now, keep in mind, this was before I'm walking my conscious spiritual path. When I grabbed my sister's hands to say my goodbyes, and just to be in her space and in her essence one last time, something was beginning to transpire with her and I. I felt as if she was pulling me out of my body and wanting to take me with her. I felt it. It felt natural somewhat, that she was reminding me of this place that she was now beginning to move toward. But it was somewhat a little bit too much for me to handle at that present state of awareness. So I sat down and leaned against the wall, and my parents, of course, came up to me and asked me, "Keith, are you all right?" And I assured them I was just fine. I felt a little lightheaded. Somehow magically, maybe because she tried to pull me out and show me something from a different perspective, that some part of me connected to wholeness. I didn't feel that my sister's passing was something of a tragedy. Many years later, the grand design, God, was prompting me to go to South Louisiana to see my parents, because my son at the time, who had only seen my father and my mother maybe 5 times since he was born, I felt that I should go down there. My parents were getting older, definitely getting older. And I wanted them to spend as much possible time together as possible. My son's mother at that time suggested, "Keith, why don't you just go down to South Louisiana during the normal Christmas school break? That way he doesn't have to miss school." Something inside of me was not okay with that, and that I must head towards South Louisiana. So I contacted the school, and they told me that, Keith, if your parents were deceased, or for that reason, it would be okay to take your son out of school down to South Louisiana. But right now we can't allow that. And I said, isn't it ironic that his grandparents are alive, which is vital and important, that it's not allowed without being absent in school? But yet, if they had died, that would be okay. She says, yes, the principal, that is. Yes, Mr. Blanchard, I understand that. But I get the feeling that you're going to take him anyway. I said, yes, ma'am, I will. So we arrive in South Louisiana. 2 hours later, after taking a nap, because we arrived at about 6 in the morning, trying to get some rest from the long trek on the road, which is about 7 hours. I had mentioned to my dad that we were going to go get some rest. And he said, well, that's fine. And when you wake up, your mother will be ready to see you. Well, when I woke up, that was not the case at all. My sister from across the room looks at me and says, Mom just had a massive stroke. Think about that. Really think about that. I'm being prompted to go to South Louisiana to take my son to see my parents. I could have took him the following week, which was the school break that the school allows for children during the first semester, right around Christmas time. But something inside, God, connection, wholeness, spoke and said, "No, Keith, you must go now." Only to get to South Louisiana 2 hours later for my mother to have a massive stroke, go to the hospital, to be sent back home, to die. 4 months into the future, my mother came to me in such a magnificent, powerful way. Out of a father, 4 of the siblings, why is it that my mother has not yet made herself known to the rest of my family to this day? My mother's been passed about 4 years. When my mother was dying on her deathbed, I had no grief, none. There was some tears of the missing her that I knew that was going to come about, but I had no pain. Is it because of what my sisters created in me, that space that she made available within me by giving me that glimpse of wanting to pull me out of my body to show me from another perspective? The prompting that I received to go see my mother, her reassurance by visiting me in an amazing way. One night, I was playing music. I usually arrive to my gigs a little early. I like to get settled in. I don't like the busy-mindedness of being under a time constraint and having to plug all the PA system in and sound checking and tuning my guitar and making sure that everything's right down to the wire. I just can't function with a peaceful mind like that. So I was there about 6:30, and a friend of mine I have not seen in quite a while comes up to me and, "Hi, Keith, and how are you doing?" And, saying hello and just kind of getting in her space a little bit, asking her some questions. "So what's been going on?" "Well, Keith, I'm having some difficulty in my life surrounding this, that, and the other," and really pouring her heart out. But there was something encrypted in her message to me. Indirectly, she kept telling me she wants to die. I wish I could see my ex-boyfriend who had died, tell him how sorry I am. I wish it was me instead of him. I wish I can tell him face to face. And after hearing this for a while, I would share with her, "Amber, you might want to be careful what you're asking for. You're indirectly telling the universe that you want to die. And if that's a choice you're making consciously, then that is your free will choice. But nonetheless, you are affirming to the universe that you had enough of this place." The following week, the same routine occurs. I'm sitting there, eating some food, getting settled in for the night to start. And Amber comes up to me again and proceeds to tell me the same exact things. "Keith, I miss Jeff so much. I just feel so bad. I wish it was me. I want to tell him face to face. I wasn't a good girlfriend." That night. But before her and I separated from our conversation, out of nowhere, I just felt to ask her, "How are things with you and your ex-husband? Is he giving you space to breathe? Is he leaving you alone? Is he still causing you trouble?" She says, "You know what, Keith? He has not bothered me in about 4 or 5 months." I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. At least for that, for sure. That night, after playing my first set of music, I was going back on stage. And to let the rest of the bandmates know that it's time to get up and start our second set, I turned on my bass amp. And there's a certain order. If you turn on the amplifier first, and then the channel on the soundboard, there's no noise. If you turn the channel on the soundboard on and then the bass amp, there's a snap. So, at the exact time I turn my bass amp on, I hear snap and can attribute it to the process of what I just showed you. And then I hear snap again. And then everyone in the room is rushing towards the front, to the front of the stage, to me, in my direction. That's a gun. And I knew it. And people are screaming, "Oh my God." And as I affirm to myself, that's a gun, I'm automatically in denial. This can't be happening. But yet, at the same time, I'm ducking down. 45 seconds later, a minute later, when I realized whatever was happening was over with, Nosy Keith, or yet am I being prompted, decides I'm going to go investigate, only to find my friend Amber laying on the floor, dying from a gunshot wound to the back. It just so happened her ex-husband came to the door of the club, paid $2, scrounged in his pocket for change, looked around the room, found her, walked up to her, pushed the people out the way, and put a pistol to her back and shot her dead. When I walked around the room and saw her lying on the floor, I immediately went up to her. And there were some paramedics and some police officers that were fans of the band. And they said, "Where are you going?" And the nurse said, "Let him go. She would want to be in his space." I ran immediately up to her, put her hand and her head in my hands, and began to cradle her and speak to her in the ear, saying the act of contrition in my own way, and telling her that if she wanted to go, have a blissful ride and I wish you well, but if you want to stay, that would be equally as beautiful. Needless to say, she did not survive. But what I want to share with you, the anxiety, the fear, the anger that I had when I was on stage, when this began, when I heard the gunshots and everybody screaming and running. When I touched Amber, it all went away. This horrific event suddenly, strangely, somehow became very beautiful to me. I was fortunate. I felt blessed and honored to be the person that would comfort her in her dying, in her life. The most amazing transition of life, ironically, is death. And that God and herself trusted me to be that person to whisper sweet somethings in her ear. It's a very beautiful experience for me. Death is not the end. We often associate pain to suffering, and suffering to death, and death being the end. It's not. If you have loved ones in your life that have crossed over, went back home, and you miss them, of course you do, I suggest whatever it is you might be carrying around, the dying, the death, the grief, the loss. We have all lost people in our lives in many different ways, in relationships that go bad and in dying. But loss, it's an illusion. You haven't lost anything. And I know from experience, as well as working with people, we grab on because we don't want to let go. And that's beautiful. But when you realize that you're grabbing on and holding on to their being invisible, and to those things that you feel bad about, the guilt, the things I should have done, shouldn't have done, should have said, shouldn't have said. This is blocking you and blocking them from making the connection. They cannot violate your free will. They will not violate your free will. But also, they can't find a way in to get to you, to say hello, to give you that reassurance, not only for your place when it's your turn, but to let you know that they are okay. To also have an ongoing dialogue with you for the rest of your time being embodied. Because you have to understand, they have not died. They're living in spiritual bliss. They're living here. They're living here. They're living all around you. They're in your auric field, your energy field. They're not in some heavenly locale gazillions of miles away in some inner plane. Yes, it might be an inner plane, but you are that inner plane. You have that plane, that dimension within yourself. And if God is everywhere all the time, there's no place it is not. God is omnipresent. What does omnipresent mean? It means present in places, every place, all places at all times. So your loved ones are with you and around you all the time. It's the grief, it's the loss, it's the death, and it's the dying. It's these ideas and the connotation that is attached to all those ideas of separation that are doing you the disservice of being able to reconnect again in a conscious way. If you truly want your loved ones to be back into your conscious experience, you have to want it. You have to desire it. You have to put aside those things that are not serving you and your goal. You have to put it down like a hot potato. You have to put them down. You may not know how, but your willingness to truly want to move through those blocks, grief, suffering, death, dying, and loss. When you put those aside, your intentions to put those aside will be the bridge to not only connect to your loved ones again, but it will be the bridge to help you feel that you've never left home yourself. It'll help you to expand inside and remember that place of your essence. My name is Keith Anthony Blanchard. I bid you a wonderful day. Peace, love, and light.